In the summer of 2025, Daniel Reeves accepted a night shift position as a security officer in one of London's newest office towers. The building stood more than 40 floors high and remained open 24 hours a day. During daylight hours, thousands of employees passed through its doors. At night, however, the tower became almost unnaturally quiet. Daniel had worked security jobs for more than a decade. He wasn't interested in ghost stories or urban legends. Strange events usually had simple explanations, and he had learned that people often imagined mysteries where none existed. For the first few weeks, everything was routine. His responsibilities included monitoring security cameras, performing patrols every 2 hours, and assisting the maintenance team whenever necessary. Nothing unusual ever happened after midnight. That changed during his 23rd night shift. At exactly 2 a.m., the radio on his desk crackled unexpectedly. Security to Lobby 1. Daniel immediately picked up the radio. "This is Daniel." Several seconds passed before an unfamiliar voice quietly replied. "The elevator stopped on floor 0. Daniel frowned. There was no floor 0. The building contained 42 floors above ground and 4 underground parking levels. Floor 0 didn't exist anywhere in the architectural plans. Assuming it was a maintenance issue, Daniel contacted the engineering department. No maintenance work had been scheduled that evening, and none of the engineers had reported any elevator problems. Curious, he opened the building's elevator monitoring system. All 6 elevators appeared to be operating normally, except one. Elevator number 4 displayed something impossible. Instead of showing a floor number, the monitor repeatedly displayed a single digit. 0. Daniel checked the system twice more. The result never changed. At 2:07 a.m., elevator 4 suddenly began moving again. The display changed from 0 to 17 before finally stopping in the main lobby. When the doors opened, nobody stepped out. The elevator was completely empty. Daniel entered the cabin and carefully inspected it. Everything seemed perfectly normal. Then he noticed something strange written across the fogged metal beside the control panel. For simple words, "Don't press 0 again." His expression immediately changed. There wasn't a button labeled 0 anywhere inside the elevator. Only then did Daniel decide to review the security footage. The recording showed the empty elevator waiting on the 22nd floor. No one entered. No one exited. Then, for less than 2 seconds, something impossible appeared on the control panel. An additional button illuminated beneath floor 1. A button marked simply 0. The button lit up as though someone had pressed it. Seconds later, the elevator disappeared from the building's monitoring system before reappearing 7 minutes later in the lobby. No explanation could be found in the security logs. According to the system records, nobody had entered the elevator that entire night. Yet someone, or something, had pressed a button that wasn't supposed to exist. Daniel spent the rest of his shift reviewing the security footage from elevator 4. He expected to find a technical malfunction or a simple explanation for what had happened. Instead, he discovered something stranger. At exactly 2 a.m., every camera connected to elevator 4 froze for 7 seconds. The image didn't disappear or become distorted. It simply stopped, as though time itself had paused. 7 seconds later, the recording resumed normally. No one had entered the elevator. No alarms had been triggered. And yet, according to the system logs, the elevator had traveled somewhere during those missing seconds. The following morning, Daniel mentioned the incident to one of the building's senior engineers. To his surprise, the older man wasn't confused by what he heard. "Was it elevator 4? He quietly asked. Daniel immediately realized this wasn't the first time something unusual had happened. The engineer explained that strange reports involving elevator 4 had appeared several times since the building opened. Most of them occurred shortly after 2 a.m. Some employees claimed they had heard the elevator arrive at their floor without the doors opening. Others reported seeing the number 0 briefly appear on the display panel. No explanation had ever been found. Before leaving, the engineer handed Daniel an old maintenance report dated several years earlier. At the bottom of the page were 6 handwritten words: "Never remain inside after 2 a.m." That evening, Daniel returned to work determined to learn more. At exactly 1:58 a.m., elevator 4 activated by itself. No one had called it. Slowly, it began moving through the building. Floor 9, floor 16, floor 27. Then the display suddenly changed. For the second time, Daniel saw it appear. 0. His heart began racing. For 3 seconds, the elevator remained on floor 0. Then the security camera inside the cabin briefly flickered. Within the distorted image, Daniel noticed something standing near the back wall. A person, motionless, wearing what appeared to be a security uniform identical to his own. Before he could look closer, the image disappeared. Seconds later, Elevator 4 returned to the lobby completely empty. Daniel immediately replayed the footage. The figure was still there. The same height. The same uniform. It looked exactly like him. Then, at 2:03 a.m., the printer beside his desk suddenly activated. A single page slowly emerged. Only one sentence had been printed on it. A sentence that made his blood run cold. Don't let it bring you to floor 0. Daniel couldn't take his eyes off the message. Don't let it bring you to floor 0. For the first time since joining the night shift, he considered requesting a transfer to another building. Nothing about Elevator 4 could be explained by logic anymore. Over the following week, nothing unusual happened. The elevator continued operating normally, and the number 0 never appeared again. Daniel slowly began convincing himself that whatever had happened was finally over. Then came his 31st night shift. At exactly 2 a.m., every light in the security office flickered once before returning to normal. Seconds later, his radio activated unexpectedly. Security to Elevator 4. The voice sounded familiar. It was his own. Daniel immediately checked the cameras. Elevator 4 was waiting in the lobby with its doors open. The cabin was empty. Then the radio spoke again. "Daniel, come quickly." Once more, it was his voice. Against his better judgment, he left the security office and made his way to the lobby. The elevator remained open as if waiting for him. When he arrived, something caught his attention immediately. For the first time, there was an additional button beneath floor 1. A small illuminated button marked 0. His heart began racing. Then he noticed something even stranger reflected in the elevator doors. Someone was standing behind him. Daniel turned immediately. No one was there. Slowly, he looked back at the reflection. The figure remained, wearing his uniform, standing perfectly still, watching him. The elevator doors began closing automatically. Instinctively, Daniel stepped backward. The doors stopped for a moment before opening once more. The button marked 0 continued glowing softly. Then the radio crackled again. This time, the voice quietly whispered, "Please don't let me go back." Daniel froze. It was still his own voice. Without thinking, he pressed the emergency stop button beside the elevator entrance and immediately shut down the entire system from the security panel. The lights inside Elevator 4 went dark, and the button marked 0 disappeared. The following morning, Daniel handed in his resignation. Before leaving the building for the final time, the senior engineer quietly handed him an old newspaper clipping dated 12 years earlier. It reported the disappearance of a security officer working the night shift in the same building shortly after 2 a.m. Daniel stared at the photograph accompanying the article. The missing officer looked exactly like him. The same face, the same uniform, even the same name. No one was ever able to explain the coincidence. Elevator 4 still operates today. Employees continue to avoid using it after 2 a.m. And although management denies that floor 0 exists, one rule remains unchanged for every new security officer. If Elevator 4 opens its doors for you after midnight, never press 0.